Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well, having a good Thursday. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, especially with all of the fallout of NXT New Year's Eve and AEW New Year's Smash last night. So let's get straight into the news stories and start off with what most people, I think everyone, is talking about last night, and that is Gallows and Anderson appearing on AEW Dynamite, reuniting with Kenny Omega and the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, to close the show. Now, AEW World Champion Kenny Omega last night retained his AEW World Championship against Rey Fenix in the main event of Dynamite's New Year's Smash Night 1 event. Now, afterwards, along with Don Callis, Kenny Omega looked to continue his attack on Rey Fenix, but he was momentarily stopped by former AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. But to the surprise of everyone, but not this guy because I predicted it, Impact World Tag Team Champions the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Karl Anderson, then made a surprise appearance by taking out Jon Moxley. Now, as noted several times on social media, it's been reported everywhere. We've certainly spoken about it a lot here on the channel with all of our Impact Wrestling videos, but AEW World Champion Kenny Omega has been working with Karl Anderson and Doc Gallows over on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. In fact, the trio is set to face Impact World Champion Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns at Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill on January 21. But during the brawl, it got really intense because wrestlers at ringside, those wrestlers that surround the ring and act as fans, in addition to the paying fans in the audience for Dynamite, they attempted to fight off the invading duo but were kept at bay. Now, eventually, the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, also AEW Executive Vice Presidents, came to the ring to question what on earth Kenny Omega was doing with Gallows and Anderson and Don Callis. Now, the Varsity Blondes, Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr., momentarily held Kenny Omega up against the ropes to say, come on, attack this guy, he's screwing over the company, as it were. But they were actually super kicked away by Matt Jackson, and the show closed with Kenny Omega putting up the Too Sweet hand sign, joined by the Good Brothers, and then finally the Young Bucks cementing their heel turn. AEW had announced early in the night that the Elite would be in action next week on Dynamite. Now, this was very, very interesting, of course. Now, as I've mentioned a couple of times, I did a preview last night for New Year's Smash. I've spoken about it extensively when we've done the Impact Wrestling videos here on the channel. We pretty much knew the Good Brothers were going to show up on him in AEW Dynamite at some point. They were going to show up in AEW. It's been rumoured for a month, 6 weeks at this point. As soon as the AEW and Impact Wrestling working relationship began and Kenny Omega began appearing on Impact Wrestling, it was very obvious and evident the Good Brothers were going to show up in AEW. They were the team and they were the people that AEW really, really wanted to have show up on the show, and I think probably that was planned for last week if it wasn't the Brody Lee tribute show. So I think this was always the plan for the New Year's Smash episode of Dynamite. I enjoyed the segment. I found it was slightly predictable in the sense that I did predict it because AEW loves the chaos ending. They love a chaos ending to the show. They love the brawl ending to the show. But what I thought they did really well with it is that a lot of the time when they have this chaos and people brawling, it takes ages for security or it takes ages for anyone to do anything. And Jim Ross mentions it on commentary several times. Where is everyone? Why are they not doing anything? So what I did like, I really did enjoy that the wrestlers at ringside decided to get in the ring and decided to try and fight off Gallows and Anderson because that makes sense. There's logic there. Why would you just sit at ringside and wait while two outside people that don't even work for the company, they're the Impact World Tag Team Champions, they're attacking the former AEW World Champion, they're aligning themselves with the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President and the AEW World Champion, who's been appearing as much for AEW as he has for Impact Wrestling in recent weeks and months. So I really enjoyed that. That made total sense. The Young Bucks' involvement, I thought they were going to come down and maybe get in a brawl with Gallows and Anderson, or at least try and chase them off, considering that it has been rumoured and reported that the Young Bucks would be eventually facing Gallows and Anderson. That still is, of course, a possibility. The way that the Bucks joined them at the end with the Too Sweet hand sign seemed relatively reluctant, I will say. It looks like they were kind of like, I'm not sure whether I should or I shouldn't, but I guess blood's thicker than water, even though, of course, they're not blood related, but you get my point. They've been friends and essentially brothers for such a long time, going back to New Japan. You know, regardless of what they're going to do, we're going to join them up. So I guess maybe we could see this reunion for a few weeks, but eventually we still could see the Young Bucks face Gallows and Anderson. But it was a moment. It was a moment, and it certainly was something that AEW have wanted to do. ever since the first episode of Dynamite way back when in 2019. The original plans were for Gallows and Anderson to sign with AEW along with AJ Styles. Gallows and Anderson, I don't know about AJ, but Gallows and Anderson were going to then debut on the debut episode of Dynamite, which actually was scheduled for Madison Square Garden originally. They were going to confront the Young Bucks and then they were going to attack them. Now, obviously, we know the timeline of that. It didn't happen. They ended up re-signing 5-year contracts with WWE. They were falsely lied to or led to believe that something else was going to happen for them in WWE. It didn't happen. And then eventually they were released as part of the budget cuts due to the pandemic last year. And they then signed with Impact Wrestling. For a brief period of time, there was heat between Gallows and Anderson and the Young Bucks over deciding to stay with WWE over AEW. I think the Bucks felt that it made them look bad. This is a time where they're early in their roles as EVPs with the company, and there was a period of time, and I understand Gallows and Anderson's point when it comes to all of this, that it was just business. They were offered a lot of money, and at the time, when they were in negotiations with AEW, no one really knew what AEW was. I don't even know if they'd done their first show yet. So you can understand this air of being cautious because they didn't know what it was. They didn't know if it was going to be this big success, which it is successful now, but they also didn't know if it was going to be, the UWF, and it was going to disappear after a couple of months. So I understand their point of view, but there was friction for a while, but that kind of disappeared once Gallows and Anderson left WWE and they made peace with the Bucks. The Bucks actually even appeared on the first Talk and Chopper Mania special on Fight TV. So there's no heat there anymore, obviously, because they're now together on Dynamite. What does this mean for them going forward? Well, it certainly looks like the old Bullet Club is going to try and take over AEW and Impact Wrestling. And it's exciting because some people might say, well, it's an old thing, they're rehashing an old faction. But you have to remember, this is a faction that has been in so many different parts of the pro wrestling world for a while, whether it's the Good Brothers being in WWE, whether it's the Bucks being in Ring of Honor, now AEW, and Don Callis being in Impact Wrestling, and all that kind of stuff. It does feel very special to see them come together. I thought the segment last night, as I mentioned, I thought it was well done. Maybe dragged out slightly too long with the fighting off the people at ringside and the time it took for the Bucks to come out there. But it was the closing image, that image right there of what everyone really wanted and what AEW wanted. That's how they wanted to go off the air. It's a very special picture, isn't it? It's certainly a great way to go off the air. It's certainly a great way to end your first episode of 2021. It's certainly a great way to get people talking as to what is going to happen going forward. As someone that covers Impact Wrestling extensively here on the channel, we're certainly going to be breaking down what this could mean from an Impact Wrestling point of view, because we know not only do Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, of course, have their ties to Impact Wrestling now, but so do the Young Bucks. They were in the TNA Wrestling briefly back in 2010, 2011, Generation Me, Max and Jeremy Buck. So maybe we could see the Young Bucks return to Impact Wrestling soon. It's certainly going to be interesting as we head into Genesis on Saturday and then Hard to Kill next Saturday and Impact Wrestling next week too. So I'm excited for this. It's obviously something AEW have wanted to do for a really long time, and that's an unbelievable image. And to have an Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President in the ring as well, have two superstars, two wrestlers holding the Impact World Tag Team Championships on an AEW show along with the AEW World Champion, it does feel like the Biz Clears has taken over the business. And I'm excited for it. It's certainly a big storyline, and it's going to be very interesting to see where they go going forward. So I've got no real criticisms of it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I really do. Speaking of that, we have some fallout from it as well, because Kenny Omega spoke to Alex Marvez after the show went off the air. Callis as well, Don Callis, the Executive Vice President of Impact Wrestling, said that he and Kenny Omega just topped what they did last month during the Winter is Coming, when they first became an alliance on AEW television. He said, quote, "You think we couldn't follow what we did at Winter is Coming? But then tonight, what did we do? We got the band back together." Omega then chimed in, said, quote, "We warned you guys, the clues were there. Weren't you listening? We're just getting started." Now, as I mentioned previously, the Elite, which is Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, will be in action in a 6-man tag team match on night 2 of AEW Dynamite New Year's Smash next week. Now, their opponents haven't been revealed as of yet, but when speaking about the match, Don Callis said, quote, "It's booked. Let's get the band back together one more time. Elite reunion." Now, when he mentions one more time there, I'm sure this is going to be a thing going forward. But like when Kenny Omega first came to Impact Wrestling, the possibilities are endless. The possibilities are absolutely endless. And it goes back to what the Young Bucks said after that Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite. They did a podcast appearance and they were asked about this relationship with AEW and Impact, and they said, what does it mean? What are the possibilities? What are we going to see going forward? What as fans can we expect to see going forward? And the Bucks just said flatly, we don't know, but we're really excited by it because even us as EVPs, we're fantasy booking and we're thinking about everything we could do, and there are some really exciting things coming up. But in addition to that, way more stuff that's potentially could happen in the future. And they're right, because look at that. How exciting is that? How exciting is that image? That's an image that some people thought when Gallows and Anderson was in WWE would never happen unless Omega and the Bucks came to WWE. So it's a really exciting storyline. It's a massive moment, no doubt, and it's a great way to start 2021 for AEW. So I'm really excited about all the possibilities that opens up. Let's talk about NXT because, of course, AEW's New Year's Smash wasn't the only television special to happen last night. NXT presented their New Year's Evil TV special, which, of course, was main evented with an NXT Championship match with Finn Balor against Kyle O'Reilly. But last night's New Year's Evil main event saw Finn Balor defeat Kyle O'Reilly to retain his NXT Championship. The brutal match went just over 17 minutes, of course, with no commercial break, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with the ratings later on today. It saw Finn Balor get busted open and bleed from his head towards the end of the match. Balor worked on Kyle O'Reilly's jaw for the majority of the match. Of course, it's a play on actually what happened to Finn Balor's jaw in their first match at NXT Takeover 31, where Balor actually sustained a broken jaw. But in addition to that, Kyle O'Reilly worked on Finn Balor's arm. Now, medics also checked on Kyle O'Reilly during and after the match, but we potentially could have some injuries, both storyline and not storyline, because WWE announced that both competitors were taken to a local hospital. Yes, hospital, not a local medical facility. So in NXT it's a hospital, in WWE it's a local medical facility. But they announced that they were taken to a local hospital after the New Year's Evil event went off the air. It was noted that Kyle O'Reilly is getting an x-ray of his jaw while Finn Balor is getting his arm checked out. This is the tweet. They said, quote, breaking after that grueling main event, both Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly are on their way to the hospital. Kyle is getting his jaw x-rayed and Finn is getting his arm checked out, WWE announced. Balor, though, seemed fine after the match while Kyle O'Reilly did sell the jaw injury. Of course, if there's any more developments, we'll talk about it here on the channel in an updated news video at some point. I would suspect that they're both storyline injuries. As I mentioned, Finn Balor looked fine after the match, a little bit of blood, but he will be fine. I'm sure the jaw injury when it comes to Kyle O'Reilly is just storyline. I would think, considering the way they did the match, I don't know if they would do a third one because, let's face it, Finn Balor's won both. So why would they have a third match in that trilogy? So I'm not sure that will happen. But it's interesting to what I said when I was doing the preview, and I mentioned this a few times talking about it here on the news videos, that it was interesting that Kyle O'Reilly was Finn Balor's first opponent back after his broken jaw, because the match is exactly what I thought it would be. It was the same as it was at NXT TakeOver 31 in the sense that it was physical, it was brutal, it was stiff, and those matches, they lead to injuries. It's inevitable. So I thought it was interesting that the first match back, it was a stiff match. It was testing out Finn Balor's broken jaw, healed jaw after the recent break. But I guess, as I mentioned before, if he's cleared, if he's healed, then you can take anything, right? So I think they're both fine. I think it's just a way of selling the injuries from the match. But I really enjoyed the match, really enjoyed the main event. They have great chemistry, and I really enjoy seeing Kyle O'Reilly in that main event spot. I think he's got so much potential, I really do. And who knows, they might have another match at some point. I would suspect, though, that Finn Balor's next challenger for that NXT Championship will be Karrion Kross. Of course, Karrion Kross defeated Damien Priest last night in the opener, which also had no commercial interruption. So I would think that the next opponent will be Finn Balor. Against Finn Balor will be Karrion Kross at the next NXT TakeOver special. We actually have a date on that. We'll talk about that in a second. So, but I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the show. I thought both shows. I thought Dynamite and NXT, I thought they were fantastic last night. We can enjoy both. So I really enjoyed that one. Speaking of Damien Priest, I mentioned that he lost to Karrion Kross last night, but it looks like he could be headed to Raw SmackDown very soon. Now, what started off, this was actually a story that came in kind of two parts yesterday, because it was reported yesterday by WrestleVotes that an NXT talent was scheduled to be called up to SmackDown last Friday night and was actually written into the main event segment with Jey Uso, Kevin Owens, and WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns as of showtime, but apparently it was delayed or cancelled. Now, at the time, there was no word of yet as to who the call-up was, but the word was at the time that person was on last night's NXT New Year's Eve card. So it could be a case of cancelling it altogether or just pushing the call back to maybe this coming week on SmackDown or maybe a couple of weeks. It could be the case that it still does happen, but they went, you know what, the timing isn't right. Why already have this person debut on SmackDown when they're going to be on the New Year's Eve special? That doesn't make sense. So a lot of people, rightfully so, I think most people, speculated that was probably Damien Priest, considering that Priest was scheduled to face Karrion Kross and most people expected that he would lose. He just lost the North American Championship back in October after only being the champion a couple of months. Given his age, given the time he's been in NXT as well, people said it's Damien Priest. He fits that role very nicely, and this was confirmed by Fightful Select because Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service, be sure to check that out and subscribe. They do great work there. They reported that WWE NXT superstar Damien Priest may be headed to Raw or SmackDown soon. As I mentioned, Priest, according to Fightful Select, was planned for the main roster call-up as recent as this week. There's no word as of yet if this is planned for Raw or SmackDown or when that call-up will happen, but it's scheduled to happen very, very soon. So I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if we saw Damien Priest this Friday night on SmackDown, or possibly if he's not going to be going to SmackDown and he's been changed out of that segment or story with Kevin Owens, Jey Uso and Roman Reigns, that he could end up on Monday Night Raw. I think going straight into a faction possibly, because I would assume he would probably align himself with Roman Reigns and Jey Uso and Paul Heyman. Having that faction, that would be really interesting. You've got Roman Reigns as the head of the table, Jey Uso, and when his brother comes back, Jimmy Uso as a tag team. And then old Punishment Martinez, Damien Priest as maybe the bodyguard of the role, with of course Paul Heyman as the advocate, legal counsel, if you were. So I think that could be really interesting. Not sure how Damien Priest fits into the whole family element of that, but I suppose Paul Heyman's there and he's not family, even though he's family by managing his Roman Reigns' fathers and cousins over the years, and maybe that's the case there. I don't know, but I'm interested, and I think Damien Priest is one of those people, I think, that goes almost against the normal pattern we see with NXT and Raw and SmackDown. Usually the pattern is if you have success in NXT, you'll have less success on the main roster, unfortunately. That's just how it works when it comes to Vince McMahon. Damien Priest, I think, will follow the Bianca Belair trajectory in that they have okay success in NXT, reasonably successful. I mean, Damien Priest, former North American champion, but I think his big success will come on the main roster. I think he'll be way more successful on the main roster than he will be in NXT. Why? Because just look at the guy. Vince McMahon will absolutely fall in love with him immediately. He's a ginormous man. He's got a great look. Yes, he's a bit older, so it would mean you have to start that push quickly, get the best years out of him, but he still is in his prime. He's 38 years old. I think that Vince McMahon will look at him and just be totally enamored with him. He's got a fantastic look. He can work. He can talk. There could be really special things for Damien Priest on the main roster. I think he'll have better success on the main roster than he does in NXT. So I'm excited to see that, and we'll have to keep our eyes out for Damien Priest's main roster debut soon. Some people were questioning why we didn't see the Fight Pit match last night for NXT New Year's Eve, because obviously it was previously scheduled that Timothy Thatcher was going to be facing Tommaso Ciampa in that Fight Pit, but it was confirmed prior to the show that the Fight Pit 2 bout between Ciampa and Thatcher had been pulled from the New Year's Evil episode. Now, there was a video that came out prior to the show where NXT General Manager William Regal has announced that the match is off due to a minor injury to Thatcher. Now, it was reported earlier yesterday that the match had been pulled from the official preview on the website. We didn't feature it when we did our preview here on the channel because it wasn't on there. Regal noted that Thatcher suffered a minor injury while training for the match, and due to the brutal nature of the Fight Pit, WWE Medical could not clear him to compete in good conscience. Regal added that after proper rehab, Thatcher should be back in action soon, and the Fight Pit bout between Ciampa and Thatcher will take place at a later date. I would probably assume that's going to be the next NXT Takeover event. I'm not sure on that, but I would assume that's the case. Now, there's no word yet on if Thatcher is legitimately injured or if this is some sort of storyline to delay the match for other reasons. It's a tough one. It seems strange to pull it, but looking at that show last night, where would it have really fit in? Because it's a match that needs a lot of time. It's a match that, frankly, because of the gimmick nature of it, probably should be the main event. So, especially for a TV show, for a takeover, maybe not so much. It can go in the middle nicely or even open the show, but for a TV show, it should probably be the main event, considering it's only the second time they've done that gimmick match. So maybe Thatcher isn't legitimately injured. Maybe they just had the conversation and said, you know what, where does it fit in last night? We're going to struggle for time as it is. It's a big match. It's a gimmick match. We need to give it time. How do you follow it? It's incredibly brutal. We already have one brutal match in the main event that's going to be incredibly stiff and snug in Kyle O'Reilly versus Finn Balor. Legitimately, does it make sense to have that match go short and essentially be a replica of the main event apart from this big apparatus around us? So maybe that's the case there. I think it's probably better suited to a takeover if it isn't happening in the main event. So obviously, Thatcher could legitimately be injured, but I would more subscribe to the theory that maybe it just didn't fit in the show. Maybe they went, you know what, it seems a waste to have it not mean anything and go very, very short. I would rather it happen on the takeover, go 20, 25 minutes, and really be something that people can rave about and enjoy. So maybe that's the case when it comes to Thatcher and the Fight Pit there. Also, we have some ratings news. Let's talk some ratings news, because I know everyone loves ratings. But we do have some ratings news when it comes to Raw Legends Night, because as expected, Raw Legends Night, the first episode of 2021 for Monday Night Raw, did pretty well, because Monday's live Legends Night edition of Raw, the first show of 2021 with Drew McIntyre defeating Keith Lee for the WWE Championship in the main event, drew an average of 2.12 million live viewers on the USA Network. This is according to Showbuzz Daily. Now, this is up nearly or over 20% from last week's 1.769 million live viewers. For this week's show, the first hour drew 2.197 million viewers. Last week's first hour was 1.886. The second hour drew 2.150 million live viewers. Last week's hour 2 was 1.783 million. And the final hour drew 2.036 million viewers. Last week's hour 3 was 1.638. Monday Night Raw ranked number 20 for the night in viewership on cable, which is up from last week's number 24 spot. But most importantly, this is Raw's best viewership and 18 to 49 rating since March 16, 2020, which drew 2.335 million live viewers with a 0.74 rating in the key demo. Now, of course, this was the first ever episode of Monday Night Raw from the closed-set WWE Performance Center that featured the Royal Rumble match airing in hours 1 and 2, plus 3 16-day happenings with WWE Hall of Famer Steve Austin. It also featured appearances from the likes of The Undertaker and Edge. However, if you look at it this way, which is very, very important, this week's edition of Monday Night Raw, the viewership is down 11% from the same week in 2020. So there is a lot to get into, and I know statistics, it can be manipulated to control your narrative in any way you want to control it, but it doesn't. To me, this isn't surprising. I know that people in WWE will be high-fiving, going, look, see, we're fixing things. We know how to fix things. Look, it's the highest-rated show since March of last year. We're back with a bang. We told USA Network, we told fans we got the message, and we told people, look, 2021, we're going to revamp it. We're going to have a big reset, and look, the ratings are up. They're up 20%. So, look, we've got it right, right? No. Everyone knew that having this Legends Night and having a WWE Championship main event would give a bump in the rating. I said that way back when they first announced it. Will it improve the ratings for a week? Absolutely. What about next week? What about the week after? It's a temporary fix. And it's a fix that isn't even as effective as it once was. Yes, it went up 20%, but the last time they did a Raw reunion, what did it do? 3 million live viewers? This week's did, what, 2 million? Great. You're down 1 million viewers from the last time you did it. So obviously it's something that is less and less effective. You're still down 11% from the same week in 2020. So you can high-five yourself, you can say how great you did, but ultimately, look at the trend. You're still going down every single year. And as I mentioned, what about next week? What about the week after? What are you going to do? Trot Hulk Hogan out for these backstage weird cameos every week? No, of course you're not. To me, you can say, oh, great, the ratings went up, but there will be a new record low. It's the same cycle, as I said before. It's the same cycle. They trot the legends out, they do this special episode, the ratings go up, and they go, look, don't worry about it. Come December of this year, December 2021, we'll do a new record low. Then we'll have the reports. WWE officials, they're shocked. WWE officials, they're angry. WWE officials get the message. USA Network is angry. We're going to fix things. We're going to change things. First episode of Raw 2022. It's Raw Legends Reunion with Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. They come back. And the ratings go up then for the first episode of 2022. The Legends show and they go, look, see? It's great. But again, if you check the tracker, it'll be 10% down from 2021 this year. That's how it works. That's the cycle that Raw constantly follows. It's Groundhog Day. It's Groundhog Day every day, because next week, maybe the viewers will go down. And then after WrestleMania, we'll get a new record low. And then we'll have the same thing. It's repetitive. It's not surprising the ratings went up, but WWE officials and USA officials, quite frankly, they're incredibly deluded if they think they fixed Raw after 1 week. There are far bigger issues when it comes to Monday Night Raw. 3 hours, boring storylines, a million recaps. The way they shoot the show is fundamentally the same as the way they did it in 1997. Big set, ramp to the ring. That's it. Nothing's changed. The way they shoot vignettes backstage, 1 camera setup, bang, in that phony office where they've hung up, I don't know, a towel to give it a weird backdrop. That's what they do. That is what they do. That is how they shoot Monday Night Raw. It has been the same forever. And eventually people are tired of it. Yes, the ratings will go up and down week on week, but you have to look at the big trend, which is that. It's going down like that. That's it. That's the same. So yes, they can high-five themselves. Yes, they can think they've solved the problems. Yes, they can send out to the websites the sources that they're happy and that their PR is very, very happy because it gives them what they want. USA Network are thrilled that they've done a good rating for the start of the year. The same problems will rear their ugly head over and over and over again until they make fundamental changes to how they produce this show, which they're not interested in doing. It's all about the short term when it comes to Raw and the WWE. That's fundamentally it. Going back to AEW, I want to talk about the new TNT Championship. Look at that. What a beautiful championship that is, because Darby Allin debuted the new TNT title last night on AEW Dynamite New Year's Smash Night 1. Now, the title wasn't really flaunted that much. It wasn't really spoken about that much. It was only really showing brief glimpses during Darby Allin's weigh-in with his next title challenger, Brian Cage, next week. The updated title features pretty much the same design as the previous iteration. The only significant change is the colour of the strap, which is now black instead of the previous red. Now, why was this changed? Because, of course, during last week's Brody Lee Celebration of Life tribute edition of Dynamite, AEW President Tony Khan gifted the TNT Championship to Brody Lee Jr., proclaiming him the TNT Champion for life. Tony Schiavone then later explained and confirmed on last week's AEW post-show that the red and gold iteration of the TNT title was retired. He said, quote, "Little Brody, -1, if you will, was always going to have that TNT bout. We'll come up with a new bout, that'll be his. The particular bout that was given to Little Brody tonight has been retired, not the TNT Championship itself." Now, with the latest recoloring, technically this is the 3rd iteration of the TNT title because, of course, the first TNT Championship was actually silver-plated because it wasn't finished. Once it was actually finished and updated, we then had the red strap with the gold plating, but now we have the gold plating with the black strap. So I think it looks great. I think it looks very, very nice. I like the look of the TNT Championship. The first iteration wasn't a fan, frankly, of, but that's because it didn't look finished at the time. I like it. I think it looks very, very nice. And I still think the whole giving it to Brody Lee Jr., TNT Champion for life, keeping the same belt that his father had, I think is absolutely tremendous. I think it's a touch of class by AEW and Tony Khan, and it's a beautiful looking bout. It's a really nice looking bout. So I'm a big fan of the new look of the TNT Championship. Going back to NXT as well, really like this news, really excited about this news because the first ever NXT Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Tournament has been announced and will take place very soon. NXT General Manager William Regal appeared in a backstage segment during last night's New Year's Eve show and announced that the women's tournament will happen soon. Now, no other details have been announced or revealed as of yet, but you can see the logo that was drawn by Dexter Lumis here. Now, on a related note, when it comes to the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, a new team has been revealed for the 2021 NXT Men's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic Tournament, which is the grizzled young veterans James Drake and Zach Gibson. It was announced that Wednesday's NXT show will feature the grizzled young veterans versus Everrise in a first-round match. The other first-round match that's been previously announced for next week is the Undisputed Era versus Breezango. So here is an updated list of the 2021 Men's Dusty Classic after last night's NXT episode. So we have the Grizzled Young Veterans, we have Everrise, we have the Undisputed Era, we have Breezango, we have Legado del Fantasma, we have Imperium, we have Drake Maverick and Killian Dane, and we have Kurt Stallion and August Grey. So that makes 8 tag teams, so I would assume that's the whole field revealed. We don't have an official bracket as of yet, but they're going to be the teams. If I was going to pick who wins that one, I know people will think the Undisputed Era. I think there is a genuine chance the Grizzled Young Veterans, they had a strong showing last year. I know Triple H, Shawn Michaels, they're big fans of them. Wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if they won. But going to the Women's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic, love it. Love that idea. Dusty Rhodes, during his time in NXT, was a big proponent of women's wrestling. He was a big supporter of the likes of Becky Lynch, right? His last ever tweet was about Becky Lynch, of course. Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, etc., Carmella. He was big supporters of the rise of women's wrestling in NXT and WWE. I love it. I think it's fantastic. So I'm really excited. Interesting as well. I think this is going to serve, or should serve, as a really strong base to make legitimate female tag teams matter again in WWE. Why? Because we have a women's tag team championship in WWE. What NXT and WWE should do is that the winner of the NXT Women's Dusty Road Tag Team Classic not only wins the trophy, but they win an opportunity at the Women's Tag Team Championship that happens at an NXT Takeover event. How big would that be for NXT? How big would that be for the Women's Tag Team Championships? Who knows? It could actually make the tag team titles mean something and actually have female tag teams competing, legitimate female tag teams, once again competing for the Women's Tag Team Championship, and actually increase the presence of having those Women's Tag Team Championships on NXT. Only a few times have they ever come over to NXT. That's one of the beauties about the NXT or the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship, is that they can be defended on all three brands. Appear on NXT. Even if it's main roster stars, it gives a main roster rub to NXT. Could help with the ratings on Wednesday. I'm just saying it did when Bayley and Sasha Banks did it. So certainly if you had Asuka and Charlotte Flair, I'm not sure how that would with NXT. We'll stay away from that one. But having them on NXT every single week would help. Now they don't have to be there every week, but I think the NXT Women's Dusty Road Tag Team Classic Tournament could serve as a great platform to get some female tag teams going in NXT and therefore in WWE. Let's bolster that division a bit. Let's make the tag team titles mean something again. So really excited for that announcement. Love that announcement. Speaking of NXT announcements, we also have an announcement about the date of the next NXT TakeOver event, because the next WWE NXT TakeOver special has been announced for Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2021. It was announced during tonight's or last night's NXT New Year's Eve special that the next NXT TakeOver event will take place on Sunday, February 14. The Valentine's Day TakeOver will take place from the Capitol Wrestling Center at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando and will air live on the WWE Network. Now, there's no word yet on the full title for the first TakeOver of 2021 or any matches or anything like that planned for the event. So once we get that, we'll talk about it here. I think it seems right, inevitable. WWE, NXT specifically, they love to bring back old concepts that people enjoy and they miss, whether it's In Your House, whether it's Halloween Havoc, The Great American Bash, etc. Surely it's right to bring back St. Valentine's Day Massacre if you're going to do an NXT TakeOver show on that day. NXT TakeOver St. Valentine's Day Massacre seems perfect. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but surely that's the thing they'll bring back. Maybe it's not the right time and climate to say Valentine's Day, especially Massacre or anything like that. I don't know. But I think maybe that would be a lot of fun to bring back. Maybe WWE are just trying to sort of feel out the climate right now to see if that's the right thing to say. We'll have to wait and see. But I hope it would be that. That would be a lot of fun to see that event return. I'm a big fan of that. Also, going back to AEW last night, it was once again reaffirmed by SCU that if they lose another match, they'll split up. So it looks like SoCal and Census days could be numbered, because Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels last night, they teamed with the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, to take on the Hybrid 2 and the Acclaimed in the opening contest of last night's New Year's Smash Night 1 events. Now, they did win the match, but after their victory, the former tag team champions took the mic to once again state that if they split, they will lose. If they lose, they will split, rather. The storyline that's been running for a few weeks, this is nothing new actually, because the new storyline's been running on AEW Dark the last few weeks. This is what Kazarian said, quote, "The next time Daniels and I lose as a tag team, he and I are done as a tag team forever. However, that is not happening on my watch. So if this is our last hurrah, Matt and Nick, I want you to know that we've got your back anytime you need us." That's what Daniel said. He also said, quote, "Except for the night that we stand in this ring face to face and those bouts are on the line, because we don't want to win those just win those championships. We want to beat the best tag team on the planet to win them." Now, interestingly enough, the finish of last night's match, the Bucks and SCU, they won that match when Daniels and Matt Jackson hit a moonsault piledriver combination on Jack Evans. This is the same move SCU, then known as the Addiction, used to beat the Young Bucks in Ring of Honor. So I've seen a lot of discussion on social media, and I agree with it, that I think probably we're heading into a direction where it's going to be the Young Bucks versus SCU at Revolution in February, whereby the stipulation is if SCU wins, they become the AEW World Tag Team Champions, but if the Young Bucks win, they split up SCU as a tag team. Talk about stakes there. That's huge stakes. I mean, Daniels and Kazarian have been a tag team for years, going way back to Impact Wrestling, where it's Bad Influence, and then the Addiction in Ring of Honor. So that would be huge stakes. A real established tag team splitting up and no longer being tag team partners. I don't know what that would mean for the careers of them in AEW. Of course, Christopher Daniels does talent relations. I think he is 50. Maybe it's a case of Daniels going behind the scenes a bit more after that. Kazarian, of course, will continue to compete in singles. He competes in singles all the time on AEW, whether it's on Dark or Dynamite. And he had a very successful singles career earlier in his career, X-Division champion multiple times as well. So maybe it could just be a case of Daniels is starting to transition behind the scenes. I don't know. But certainly a match at Revolution where it's, if the Young Bucks lose, they lose the Tag Team Championships. But if SCU lose, they'll split up. I think that's a real fascinating and big-time match with a lot of stakes there. So I'd be totally into that one. I think that would be a lot of fun to see. And finally, we got the anticipated return of Xia Li last night on NXT, because last night's NXT New Year's Eve special saw Xia Li and Boa returned from their mysterious transformations in recent months. Li and Boa came out with a new entrance and new looks, while the mystery woman accompanied them to stage, watched from her chair. The male Shifu Master was nowhere to be seen, and the mystery masked woman was not revealed. Li and Boa stopped on the ramp during their new entrance to allow Li to put on a quick performance with a pair of size. Li then hit the ring and faced off against Katrina Cortez with a fairly easy victory. Li stopped at one point during the match and turned to the mystery woman and bowed to her. Li ended up putting Cortez away with a kick for the pin to win the match. Boa and Li also returned to the mystery woman's chair after the match and bowed to her. Li took to Twitter after New Year's Eve and made several tweets declaring that she and Boa are just getting started with their transformation, saying, quote, "This is just the beginning." Really enjoyed the new look, really enjoyed the new gimmick. I mentioned it before, I enjoyed the vignettes that they've been doing. Maybe took a little bit too long with them, they became slightly repetitive after a while, but they did tell a nice narrative story, and I enjoyed when they got darker and darker. And like I said, I enjoyed the look, I enjoyed the entrance. The match was secondary, it didn't matter, it was all about progressing the storyline. I'm kind of pleased that we didn't have full revelations, that we didn't have the mystery woman being masked, we didn't have the male Shifu Master get revealed or anything like that. So I'm excited for that, because why would you blow it all in one night? Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I really enjoyed that, and I think it's going to be something to watch closely. I think NXT and WWE are putting a lot of time and focus into this one, and it looks like it's paying off. So enjoyed that last night with Xia Li. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news stories we've spoken about here today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.